Hello, and welcome to VUTV Political Report, where we bring to you a condensed report of worldly affairs. The date is Thursday, October 19th. I'm Lauren Clark.
And I'm Matthew Miranda. Today we will be discussing, in domestic news, the nomination of a new Secretary of Homeland Security, recent executive orders relating to the Affordable Health Care Act, the forest fires that have been plaguing California, healthcare negotiations, the rise of national injunctions, and to cap it all off, our very first special report, recorded earlier today from Chicago.
Moving to international affairs, we'll discuss the Kurdish referendum that continues to evolve, President Trump and the Iran nuclear deal, North Korea, the most recent bombing in Somalia, the current situation in Catalonia, and finally, we'll end with France's combat against sexual harassment. Kayla will be starting our show today with her report on the nomination of the Homeland Security Secretary.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Kirstjen Nielsen was nominated last week by President Trump to serve as Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Nielsen has extensive background and expertise knowledge in Homeland Security policy and strategies, cybersecurity, risk assessment and management, as well as a multitude of other areas of critical infrastructure protection. Nielsen previously worked as a special assistant to President Bush on the Homeland Security Council and was the president and general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security before taking her position at the White House this past September. President Trump nominated Nielsen last week, stating that she is a dedicated leader whose number one priority has always been the safety and security of our country and our citizens, not politics or ideology. If Nielsen is confirmed by the Senate for this position, she will be the first ever Department of Homeland Security Secretary that has previously served as a member of this agency. And now on to our next story. On October 12, 2017, President Trump signed an executive order to promote healthcare choice and competition across the United States. The newly adopted policy is to facilitate the purchase of insurance across state lines and the development and operation of the healthcare system that provides high-quality care at affordable prices for the American people. The order outlines the three main priorities for improvement by the administration. They are association health plans, short-term limited duration insurance, and health reimbursement arrangements. One other main focus within the order is promoting the expansion of the healthcare competition, rather than allowing it to remain in a consolidated state. Within 180 days from the signing of this order, the President requires a report from the Secretary of Health and Human Services detailing state and federal laws that fail to meet the policies set forth by this order, as well as any other actions that could further assist in progressing the implementation of these policies. After this initial report, the Secretary of Health and Human Services will be required to report on the same failure to comply and suggested compliance actions to the President every 2 years. Now on to Melissa.
Recent developments have been made regarding the California forest fires. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection has been trying to contain the majority of the fires across northeastern California. The city that is greatly affected is Napa Valley. According to CNN, 50,000 plus forest fires in Napa and Solano counties have been 56% contained. However, the forest fires have destroyed approximately 217,000 acres of land over all the counties affected. This has led to thousands of residents to be evacuated. For the past 5 days, the government of each county has been assessing the situation and relying on CAL FIRE to give them data on whether they should lift evacuation orders. Although the city of Napa is still in grave condition, they lifted evacuation orders on Sunday, October 15th. As a result of the devastation on Napa, Solano, and Sonoma counties, citizens across the United States are currently concerned whether the prices of wine will increase. This is due to the fact that most domestically produced wine comes from Napa Valley and other Californian vineyards. However, the fires have not been completely contained, and threats of new wildfires continue in cities like Santa Rosa. Thus, the impact on wine purchasing and its effects on the national economy is still to be determined. CAL FIRE's main priority is to contain the wildfires in order for residents to return to their homes.
Thanks, Melissa. Stay tuned after this short break, where we'll be bringing you 3 more stories for our domestic news segment tonight.
Introducing Valparaiso University. What's a better way to start your day than with a new jam? And WVUR has just what you need.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it... If dying young won't change your mind, baby, right.
Broadcasting sports, news, weather, and music, on air, online, and on campus. WVUR is my jam.
Welcome back. We're now moving on to healthcare, a heavily debated topic that has been the subject of one of the most divisive conversations in Capitol Hill. However, it seems a bipartisan plan may not be that far-fetched. Senators Alexander and Murray, who sit on the opposite sides of the aisle, have revealed a 2-year healthcare plan that is set to continue the government subsidizing of a cost-sharing reduction payment that has been the staple of the Affordable Health Care Act and brings an increase to the speed and flexibility of state regulatory waivers. However, the biggest problem facing this plan is President Donald Trump. Although he is reported to have encouraged Senator Alexander to go forward with the deal, he has become a major critic, citing a need to remove all government subsidies within healthcare. The bill still has a long way to go, given that it was revealed this Wednesday. Alexander and Murray are still attempting to find co-sponsors on both the right and the left in an effort to pressure the House and Senate leadership into backing this new plan. Moving on to an up-and-coming problem in our legal system, are national injunctions going to collapse the field of law as we know it? Some judges worry that it might. An injunction within a courtroom is an order given by a judge for a particular party to either begin or desist from continuing a specified activity. This is rarely an issue and is a commonly used tool in the hands of a judge. A national injunction is different in that it applies across the country. This sets precedent and therefore has much larger consequences. This practice leads many attorneys to judge shop, meaning to seek out judges that are likely to make a national injunction in their favor with little regard to the full ramifications of the precedent they are setting. National injunctions were very rarely used until near the end of the former President Obama's second term in office, when Republican-leaning judges would use them to freeze and prevent programs from being implemented by the president. Since the election of Donald Trump, the number of these national injunctions has skyrocketed, leading a number of legal professionals to wonder what is to become of our legal system. To conclude our domestic conversation for tonight, I would like to introduce to you a new segment, a special report. I'm standing here on Clark Street in the Little Italy neighborhood of Chicago. The time is approximately 10:15 a.m., and at about 11 a.m. this morning, Chris Kennedy will be giving a campaign speech in Maggiano's, which we're standing next to. He is the nephew of former President John F. Kennedy and will be running for governor of Illinois. He's running on a more progressive campaign with key policies such as the legalization of marijuana, a $15 minimum wage, a new progressive tax policy, and a new College for All program. Let's take a look inside. Chris Kennedy has been campaigning throughout Illinois in the past months and has covered a variety of topics. Today, Mr. Kennedy discussed how he would tackle the issue of government reform. Chris Kennedy comes from the perspective of a political outsider, although he is a member of the prominent Kennedy family. He has a business background rather than a political one. Because of this, Mr. Kennedy is campaigning as a beacon of hope in a world of political corruption. After his speech, Mr. Kennedy agreed to answer a quick question for those interested in the political process. Thank you, sir. We're very glad to come out here today. What would you have to say to young Democrats in college who are looking to get involved in the political process?
Get involved. It's the most important thing that you can do. It's more fun than anything that you've ever done, and it's a great eye-opener to the way the world really works. If you go into business, if you want a professional career, no matter what occurs, you'll always have benefited from your experience in a campaign, so you learn how American democracy functions.
This concludes our domestic segment for tonight. Join us after this break for Lauren with this week's international news. Thank you.
What is passion? At Valpo, it's something that pours out of us uncontrollably. It's a late night shot of caffeine, cramming for finals, a jam session with friends. It sees deep into space, turns big stuff into small potatoes, floats boats and floods the senses. Passion is alive, it has a heartbeat, and it lives in you. How do we know? Because at Valpo, passion is who we are.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up. Thank you. Nailed it. Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
Welcome back. To start our international segment, we're revisiting the current state of the Kurdish people in northern Iraq. Last time we discussed the Kurdish independence referendum that was voted on in Kirkuk in September. The referendum was meant to open discussion between northern Iraq and the federal government of Iraq. While the Kurdish members of the northern Iraq voted yes for Kurdish independence talks, the federal government of Iraq pushed back, as well as many other nations in the Middle East and even across the world. I'm here with Kayla, who has all of the details. Kayla, tell me, how is Turkey's president feeling about the referendum?
Turkey's President Recep Erdogan was adamantly against the referendum, stating that his military forces that surrounded the border in northern Iraq were there in case any possible national security threats to Turkey.
How are other countries handling this vote?
Other nations bordering northern Iraq share the same resistance to the vote, fearing that the succession of Kurdish Iraq could lead to demands for sovereignty by the Kurdish people in their own countries. While the United States is stood firmly against the referendum vote, their reasoning varies from the countries in the Middle East. The United States did not support the vote because they believe that it would have led to the division and weakened country that would be unable to continue its fight against ISIS. The worry of the United States has proven to be well-founded. Within the last week, Iraqi government has sent forces into the disputed city of Kirkuk, where the vote was held. There remains to be a clash between the Kurdish citizens of northern Iraq and the federal government of Iraq. Forces will not back down on either side at this time.
Thank you, Kayla, for your expertise. Now moving on to other international news, President Donald Trump has refused to certify the Iran nuclear deal and in return has fueled tension between America and the Islamic Republic and a growing mistrust of America among Iranians. Iranian officials and media outlets condemned Trump's comments on Saturday, October 14th, when Trump accused Iran of violating the 2015 accord and demanded Congress to restrict the law governing United States participation. Trump admitted that he was not ready to pull out of the deal, but said that he would do so if conditions were not improved. Shortly after Trump's announcement, the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani agreed that his country would remain in the deal, but also said that Iran would continue to build and test ballistic missiles as it is permitted under the nuclear deal. However, recent surveys have shown an increasing majority of Iranians who suspect that the United States will not live up to its obligations in the nuclear deal, while most have not yet to see the benefits of the deal itself as Iran's economy struggles to fight inflation and unemployment.
In other worldly news, tensions are still rising between the United States and North Korea. There are currently U.S.-South Korean military-led exercises off the Korean peninsula that are completely defensive in nature. Pyongyang, North Korea, believes that these exercises are for a U.S.-led military invasion. Furthermore, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is diplomatically addressing the situation, but said on CNN's recent State of the Union that diplomatic efforts will stop once the first bomb drops. Tillerson made clear that the route President Donald Trump wants to make is that of diplomacy in order to facilitate North Korea's nuclear weapons ambitions. This is contrary to the president's recent Twitter statement, indicating that diplomacy will not be sufficient enough to resolve the issue. However, Tillerson says that the administration will seek all means necessary to avoid violence. The main issue at hand is that both North Korea and the United States continue to threaten each other, therefore disrupting the process of diplomacy whatsoever. President Trump uses Twitter to motivate military action by stating that the U.S. can entirely destroy North Korea if needed, which in turn leads to North Korea ceaselessly developing nuclear missiles and threatening to attack Guam. Ultimately, Tillerson will continue efforts to convince the president to maintain the avenue of diplomacy in order to decrease tensions between both nations.
VUTV, your campus, your story.
Welcome back from the break. Melissa and I have breaking news regarding the attack in Somalia.
On Saturday, October 14th, more than 270 people were killed and hundreds of people were injured in Mogadishu, Somalia by a terrorist bomb attack. Officials are calling this one of the deadliest attacks to hit the capital since 2007. Moreover, the attack occurred only 2 days after the head of the United States Africa Command was in Mogadishu to meet with Somalia's president. This was also after the country's defense minister and army chief had resigned for undisclosed reasons. How is the United States linked to this attack, and what is the president's reaction?
Actually, Melissa, the United States did have an impact after the attack. In fact, the attack followed President Donald Trump's urgent push to defeat the Shabab, who are Somali-based militants who have terrorized the country and East Africa for years. The Shabab once controlled most of the city, but have recently lost a large majority of the territory due to offensive attacks by African Union forces, the Somali army, and with some help from the United States. Some of the Shabab militants have proclaimed allegiance to al-Qaeda, while others to the Islamic State. Have there been any new developments after the attack?
Yes, on Sunday, the Somali president, Mohamed Abdullahi, declared 3 days of national mourning and donated his own blood for victims, asking fellow citizens to do the same.
Was President Abdullahi's reaction toward the attack appropriate?
Although this is not the most traditional way for a president to respond to this sort of situation, I think it was appropriate for him to advocate for the victims of the attack and prompting citizens to become aware of the gravity of the devastation it has caused over the country. However, if I might ask, how is this attack significant and unlike previous attacks from the Shabab?
Well, according to counterterrorism specialists, the size of the bombings on Saturday were more fatal than any operation the Shabab have ever conducted before, suggesting that the group may have received help from al-Qaeda operatives in Yemen or in the Arabian Peninsula, which is known for its explosives. If you followed our show last week, you'll recall that we covered Catalonia's attempt to separate from Spain. While the tension is only increasing and liberty for Catalonia is still looking unclear. On Monday the 16th, Mr. Puigdemont, leader of the separatist movement, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Spain, Mariano Rajoy, asking to negotiate a solution to the territorial conflict, but had not clarified whether or not he declared independence from Spain. The Catalan government accused the Spanish government this Tuesday, October 17th, of destroying any chance of dialogue after a Spanish judge ordered the arrest of 2 main leaders of the Catalan separatist movement. Then in the evening, over 200,000 demonstrators gathered in Barcelona to protest for the release of these leaders. The Catalan independence movement plans to hold another protest in Barcelona on Saturday, October 21st. The Spanish Prime Minister, Rajoy, is urging the Catalan president to, quote, act with sanity, unquote, and to clarify whether or not the region has declared its independence, and has given him until Thursday to explain the situation. In other news that has not affected just the United States, but also abroad, Harvey Weinstein, an American film producer who produced many movies, including the very well-known Pulp Fiction, has been accused for sexual harassment by over 40 women. The Weinstein scandal has even extended to France, affecting French actresses Judith Godrèche, Léa Seydoux, and Florence Darel. Following these accusations that started on October 5th, but that recalls over 3 decades of sexual harassment from Weinstein, French journalist Sandra Muller brought attention to the social media realm with her Twitter hashtag Balance ton porc, or in English, Expose Your Pig. Already, over 160,000 women have testified through social media to their experiences with sexual harassment. Proposals in France are under discussion now to fine men for aggressive catcalling or lecherous behavior toward women in public, which extends the limitations in cases of sexual assault involving minors and creates a new age ceiling under which minors cannot legally consent to a sexual relationship. Currently, French law permits underage victims to file charges for sexual assault up to 20 years after the victim turns 18. But France's Secretary of State in charge of equality between men and women, Marlène Schiappa, wants to extend it to 30 years and wants to raise the age of consent as well. French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Sunday that he had began the procedure to revoke Harvey Weinstein of France's highest award, the Legion of Honor, that he had received in 2012 for having promoted foreign cinema in the United States.
That concludes our broadcast for this week. We thank you all for watching.
We'd like to thank our editors and our authors here at VUTV Political Report, and give a very special thank you to Chris Kennedy's campaign press management for allowing us to cover our special report.
On behalf of the whole team here at VUTV Political Report, have a good night.